Hey, we're getting ready to make some venison kielbasa. Now in this tub we have our already ground venison, and we're going to cut it with some pork. Actually, we're going to use 2 pounds of venison, 3 pounds of pork. And we're leaving the fat in. All that pork fat, all of this pork meat and venison is going to be ground together. Time to feed the grinder and get this meat ground up, and here we have it. That was quick. Now my seasonings I used was 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of ground black pepper, 1/2 tablespoon of onion powder, 2½ teaspoons of mustard powder, 2 teaspoons of marjoram, and 1 cup of powdered non-fat milk. And now it calls for 2 cups of cold water, 1 teaspoon of Instacure, that's for 5 pounds of meat, and 6 teaspoons of kosher salt. I'll leave a list of the seasonings I used in the description below. And this should be 6. The very first one was the Instacure. Now we'll get it all mixed up and dissolved good, and we're going to set it in the refrigerator while we mix in the seasonings. We just added our seasonings and the powdered milk and started mixing before we realized we didn't have the camera on. So now on with the mixing. Now we get the water out of the refrigerator that has the Instacure #1 in it and the kosher salt. We pour about half of it in there and mix. Now it looks awful wet, but it will all work in. You just got to keep working it. Now we'll add the other half, and we'll just continue to work and mix it with our hands. I don't really care for these gloves at all. Well, this is what you use when you can't find the good ones, and they'll get you by. Now you get it all mixed together and well incorporated, and it'll get really tacky. And once it becomes really tacky, we're going to set it in the refrigerator and get our hog casings ready. Now these are cured hog casings you get. They're packed in salt. You want to rinse them several times. Just work them like that and just dump it out and do it again. Do it several times. Make sure you get all that salt out of there. And you can open up the inside at one end and let water dribble down through it, and then you just run it through there, flushing the inside of the casing out too. And I also do this when I'm loading the casing on the stuffer. And we'll add warm water, set them on the counter, and let them soak for about 30 minutes to an hour. Now as we're loading the meat, we push down on the meat and try to work out all the air we can. You don't have to push real hard, just make sure you push down enough that it covers the walls and everything inside, pushing down each layer or each handful of meat you put in. Now we'll place our hog casings on the stuffer tube, and you'll see where I hold this open and get water into the casing. That way it'll slip on easier, and it also load the sausage into the casing easier. And you're also flushing out the inside of it one more time. Once we get our casing on the tube, we'll tie a knot into the end of it and get ready to load this sausage into it. Now I'm having a little trouble, it looks like, but we make it. We'll get it on there. We got a knot there. We made it. Looky there. Now I think it's time to speed up production here a little bit. Well, we reached the end of this hog casing. All right, we make this one, curl it all up there, and we'll make some short links out of it here in a little bit. Now I'm going to take my corn cob holder and poke holes in it, and we'll do this on both sides. And we continue to poke holes in it until we reach the center. And now we flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Now it's time to load another hog casing on there and finish stuffing this sausage. Tie a knot in the end here. Now this casing for some reason didn't really feel just right. There's just something about it. Start stuffing our casing. Everything seemed to be going all right. Except for that blowout. But no problem. We'll take the meat we get out of it, put it back in the hopper, retie a knot in the end of this casing, and start stuffing again here in a little bit. And we poke a hole in the end of it to let the air out. Well, the battery went dead in the camera. Didn't realize it. So here's where we're picking back up at. So we're making these links about 5 to 6 inches long. Some of them's going to be a little shorter. So we'll get them twisted into links and we'll get them ready for the smoker. But we wait an additional day before we put them in the smoker. The wind is blowing so hard outside. We're having 30 and 40 mile an hour gusts outside. So I decided not to smoke them today. Now the wind gust is supposed to be down tomorrow. Hopefully it is. We're still going to have some wind, I understand, but hopefully it's not as bad as it was today. Now we'll get these links over onto a smaller tray where they'll fit into the refrigerator a little bit better. Set them in there to dry out. And they're ready to go back into the icebox. I could say icebox. That's what I grew up with, calling a refrigerator icebox. Okay, we took some of this sausage and we made a patty out of it. We're frying it up. We're going to see what it tastes like. And I do believe it will taste good. Clear. Looks good. Hey, this is good. This is good. Tastes just like the last kielbasa I made, only I made this with pork and venison instead of beef and pork. No wild taste. If it is, I can't tell it because I love deer. I love venison. I don't taste the wild taste. This just tastes like kielbasa to me, and just like the last I made. It is good. Try this recipe, you'll like it. Now this is the leftover out of the stuffer, the elbow and the tube. I'm going to just make a small loaf out of it. Well, the wind is still blowing pretty good, but not as bad as it was yesterday. Now we're going to set these links in here, and we're going to set it to 175 degrees. And I believe it takes about 5 hours to complete them. And we reach an internal temperature of 153 degrees. Actually, I think it was like 156 degrees. Now the last seasoning that we put in these kielbasas is right there in the smoker. I'm using pecan and apple, and I believe it's by Lumberjack. I've yet to find anything any better. Now I set these about midway. I think this is the best place to put them when you're smoking them. I'd rather hang them, but I didn't hang these. I went ahead and just laid them on the racks. And I also have my water pan down below. It's full of water. I believe in keeping my water pan full when I'm smoking. Now we'll make a place for that the leftover, and now it don't have a casing on it. I'm just putting it in there on the rack. And we put a meat probe in the thicker loaf looking one that we got the meat out of the elbow and the tube, and then we put one in one of the links down below. Now this here is about 3 hours in. Looking good, the color's looking great. You can see where I turned them over. And we're at 129, 131, top and bottom. Now we've reached an internal temperature of 156 degrees. We're going to pull them off and put them in a cold water bath. I tell you what, my mouth is watering for one of those. They smell delicious. Let's get them into this cold water bath. And putting them into this cold water bath will stop the cooking process and help stop them from shrinking. Now as I pulled them out of the water, I wiped them down, lay them up on this cooling sheet, and we're going to let them sit here and bloom for a couple of hours. Look at that. These turned out great. They taste delicious. Oh, that smoke flavor along with all the seasonings. Can't get any better than this. Hey, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope you consider subscribing.